When Pokemon Legends ZA first released, there were so many reasons for me to be excited. Legends Arceus had already stolen my heart a few years ago, but even aside from the fact that it had Legends in the title, there was just so much promise for this game. From a fully realised Lumiose City to explore with all kinds of characters to meet, to the return of Mega Evolution with a live battle system that kinda makes you feel like you're in the anime itself, the potential here was off the charts. And like with every other Pokemon game that's released on the Switch, I knew that I wanted to build a shiny team to experience this new and exciting chapter with. Which actually makes this a really interesting adventure to go on, because there's been quite a lot of discussion around how Legends ZA presents the concept of shiny Pokemon. Some people love it and think that it's amazing that it's become more accessible, but other people feel like shinies have become almost too easy now. So where do I fall on that scale? Well, we'll go into that later in the video, but for now I'd just like to say that regardless of whether it's more or less difficult to shiny hunt in a game than it is to in others, it's always that sense of adventure that I crave more than anything else. It's about taking hours upon hours to shiny hunt for a team whilst carefully building them up, really appreciating the characters and short bursts of story in between that I might not ordinarily do in a regular playthrough, before finally finishing the journey and looking back on the mountain that we all climbed together. That last part in particular is such a rewarding feeling, and as this is the first time a new Pokemon game has released since I started the channel, it occurs to me that this might be my most important journey yet. So with all that in mind, I hope you'll enjoy my adventure through the glitz and glamour of Lumiose City, with Pokemon Legends ZA, but I can only use shinies. Several years after the events of X and Y, where Lysander activated the ultimate weapon and almost doomed the region of Kalos, Pokemon Legends ZA opens with a foreboding cutscene from the perspective of a lone Zygarde cell, watching a potential catastrophe unfold at Lumiose City's Prism Tower. And what an opening this is. In a lot of Pokemon games, we'd be jumping straight into the story itself in the most simple of circumstances, but just like with Legends Arceus, our introduction here is shrouded in mystery. With a long tutorial section and our first shiny hunt ahead of us though, it's going to be a while before we're able to find anything else out if we don't get a move on, so let's jump straight in. Our first introduction to Lumiose is a chance encounter with a girl named Tawny, who's eager to find a tourist to help advertise a place called Hotel Z, before a nearby billboard interrupts her with the Quasartico CEO monologuing in a typically corporate way about the city's redevelopment plan. And whilst I was trying to analyse this announcement, a pancham ran off with my bag. Nice. I'm 5 minutes into a story about a city that's based on Paris and I've been robbed. Well, that feels pretty accurate. After running to catch up with the thief and reclaiming our bag with a starter Pokemon that is unfortunately shiny locked, we headed onwards with Tawny to the hotel she was talking about earlier. And it's here where we meet several characters that are members of a group called Team MZ. We've got AZ, the 3,000-year-old former king of Kalos, who not only owns the hotel alongside his partner Pokemon Floette, but who is also a returning character after some heavy involvement in the plot of X and Y. Lida, the younger sister of Tierno from the X and Y games, who is just as obsessed with dancing as he was. Naveen, who's a fashionista of sorts and way too into streamer culture if you ask me. And finally, Tawny, who came to the city in search of someone and founded Team MZ in the process, with the goal of keeping Lumiose safe in order to keep the person she was looking for safe too. And these characters are just a huge part of what makes this game so special. You get to theorise with them in strategy meetings, you battle alongside them against some huge threats to the city, you go through countless struggles and resolve problems with them, and at this point in the game you become one of them, agreeing to go for glory in the ZA Royale whilst protecting Lumiose along the way. And you get a cool jacket too, which is something that I decided to cosplay with for the entirety of this shiny only adventure, so enjoy seeing this getup for the rest of the video. But to become an effective member of Team MZ, we're going to need more than just a fancy jacket, so let's start by finding our first shiny team member. Now this is a weird shiny hunt, but it's also pretty straightforward. It all begins with Tawny offering to show us around our first wild zone of the city, which are these areas that Quasartico have walled off with holo technology to give the Pokemon who have flocked to Lumiose in recent months a makeshift habitat to live in. And as we're about halfway through the tutorial section, you might assume that maybe the Pokemon here are shiny locked, but it turns out that they're actually not, or most of them aren't anyway, as you can see on screen. But before we can even attempt to find our first team member from this zone, we also need to talk a little bit about how shiny hunting in this game works. Because after giving players so much fun over the years with things like mass outbreaks and catch combos, Game Freak decided to do something strange with ZA, by not putting in any methods to boost the odds whatsoever. So yeah, the odds are going to be 1 in 4096 for every single shiny hunt in this adventure. But that's not really a bad thing, as you'll see later in the video, and there are still methods to find shinies that extend beyond running around like we're doing for this shiny hunt, it's just that they don't actually boost the shiny odds. And in addition to that, the best part about shinies by far in ZA is that any shiny that spawns in will not disappear unless you do something to directly cause it to flee or despawn. So you can save as soon as you hear the shiny noise and either reset if the catch is unsuccessful or just come back for it later on. There is a cap of 10 shinies that are able to stay on the map at any one time, but that's pretty generous, so you don't really need to worry about that. And for now, we really don't need to worry about it, because this shiny hunt just involves some good old running around. So for now, let's focus on one of the most special moments in a new shiny only adventure, and that's finding our first team member. The only shiny hunt really I've ever been truly unlucky on was that Motorstoke Gym shiny. Everything else has been fairly standard. Even if it's gone over odds, it's not gone ridiculously over odds. So, I guess the question is, am I... Oh, no! Speechless. Speechless. I was just gonna say, am I gonna go crazy over odds? Or am I gonna see it soon? Yes! Let's do this. Come on, get in the ball. Yes! You're not wrong. Snowlord says it always happens when you talk about the odds. I do have a bit of a habit of sitting here and going, is this going to be really over odds? I think this might be a really long one, and then bam, it shows up. I can't quite believe that took that long, but irrefutable proof that you can get a shiny right after you catch those first 2 Pokemon as part of this tutorial section. You don't need to go to Mabel's lab and open up the game. If you, I mean, obviously if you want to do that, great, because you may as well do. But for my purposes, I really wanted to get one before I could progress, because it felt like that was the right thing to do. So yeah, pretty awesome. What's Malva like in battle? Kill, Malva, kill! This was an awesome start, and whilst Malva wasn't really the shiny that I wanted, in truth I just needed something to race through the tutorial section with so that we could hunt for my real shiny starter of the run. So for now, we said au revoir to Tawny and headed onwards to the Pokemon Research Lab, just to find that Sycamore retired and was replaced with an ex-Team Fleur scientist called Mabel, who wants us to do a ton of research across the city. Things like catching Pokemon, evolving them, collecting Megastones, and then something in the small print about having to battle 1000 times, which I think is very obvious satire about how we often agree to terms and conditions without actually reading them, so we're officially safe to agree to this brilliant bit of social commentary. Good one, Mabel. Moving on, it's actually time to head into our first night in the ZA Royale, which follows the same format throughout the game of beating lower level trainers to earn enough points to battle in a promotion match, and these matches let you move up a rank if you can score a win. If we can make it to the very top of this competition, Quasartico will grant us a wish, which is something that every trainer in this competition has got their eye on. Thankfully, our first opponent has never secured a win in his promotion matches, so despite having 3 whole Pokemon, Zach still lost to my 1 Fletchling as we moved up to rank Y, although it was a lot closer than I thought it would be. And what do we get to celebrate this monumental achievement with? but a banquet of croissants and curry back at Hotel Z. Yeah, I'm with Naveen on this one. Anyway, the next day was a big one as we were finally off to finish up this tutorial section and really start exploring Lumiose City. We got a good look at Prism Tower with Tawny and briefly met Vinny, who's the secretary to Quasartico CEO Jet. Saw a protest of sorts by a group called the Fist of Justice who want to abolish wild zones and let Pokemon run free in the city, and then we finally headed onwards to the Looker Bureau to visit a detective named Emma. She's another returning character from X and Y who I think is a fantastic example of how seamlessly Pokemon manages to introduce these older characters, proving that you don't always need to know what their backstory is in order to appreciate them as a character. If you're an oldie like me, then you'll be able to pick up on some nice touches about her past, but if you're a newer player who's unfamiliar, then she's just an ace detective who is highly regarded by the various people we meet, and that's really all you need to know. Emma's got a few side missions, which is pretty cool, but the more amazing thing about getting to this point is that we're now able to go wherever we want in the city, which led to me finding a shiny Bellsprout exactly on my 31st birthday, as I ran around the city exploring and picking up some colourful screws. But it also freed me up to start getting serious about this adventure by going on a targeted shiny hunt for a really special Pokemon, which was the one that I described earlier on as my actual starter of the run. You see, I've never shiny hunted for an Eevee before on the channel, and that's mainly because Eevee tends to be this really rare spawn that's only available later in the game or under quite rare circumstances. But in ZA, finding one this early is actually the perfect time to do so, because Emma's side mission quest not only puts a pause on the time of day, but also locks the weather to sunny, which are the exact conditions that can cause an Eevee to spawn. There's a few spots throughout the city where you can find one, but my favourite was this spot near Magenta Plaza, because you're able to spawn and despawn it quite quickly by simply running backwards and forwards on the same rooftop. So with a pretty simple shiny hunt on our hands, I now just had to hope that the game would be kind to me after I went over odds on the first hunt, but man, Eevee did not want to show up, and I ended up having thousands of encounters with this spawn across so many hours with zero luck. What made this worse though was that my chosen method of running back and forth meant that I wasn't spawning in any of the other Pokemon in the area. Or at least, I thought I wasn't. I'm not actually sure what other Pokemon spawn around here. I don't think I'm actually causing anything other than Eevee to spawn in. And I'll tell you why. Because the distance between like here, which is usually where I see the Eevee, right? I get to here and I see it. The distance between there and there is not that much. So I don't spawn anything out on this roof, or on the roof we're on, or anything really around the sides. The routes that are on the other side of that, I don't think I'm getting far enough to spawn them in, so I don't think that they're being affected. And even this Weedle and what? Yeah. Yeah, you were so right, Matt. You were so right. You were so right with that, weren't you? No other Pokemon are spawning in. What an idiot! and and as well, Beedrill was actually one that I really wanted. Can I just say, in my defense, right? In my defense, I did test. I did test this. We tested this the other day on stream, and I got, like, over there, and when I came back, the Beedrill was no different. It was literally the same one. Oh, it's a nice shiny, though. And it looks really good in ZA as well, to be fair. Look at you. Oh my god. I was spawning the Ralts in. No way. Oh. Oh my god. Oh, you are so cool. So cool. Oh my god. Shiny Ralts. Okay, now we've got to check if this is a male.
It is, it's male. I can get Gallade.
Man, the spawn distance in ZA is weird. Like, I genuinely still don't know how I managed to do that when Ralts was so far away, but I literally couldn't be happier. And not only did these phases make all of the time that I'd spent running around looking for Eevee more than worth it, but it also changed the landscape of my adventure. You see, I'd initially planned on grabbing Eevee and then going to hunt for Canari next, but getting a male Ralts by complete chance like this was just too good of an opportunity to pass up. And I know that it's a pretty decent 50-50 chance to find a male, but you've got to remember that in my head, I didn't even think I was spawning these in. Now, I've not only got a Gallade in just 7 levels time, but I've also got a fantastic Mega Evolution for the endgame. So thank you, shiny gods. Now, if I could just have that Eevee as well, that'd be perfect.
Aoyama says, yes, they swarm you. Yeah. Just like the lions. The Pyros. Oh my god! We got it. We got it. No way! That was so obvious. Oh! I don't know if I've been this happy. Yes! I mean, can we just appreciate that it, like Mark says, perfect stream to get it on. The last stream of 2025, the final shiny hunt that I was doing of this entire year, and it's something that's taken me a long time to find, that's been like a real, let's be honest, has been a real grind. And it showed up. It is another storybook moment. It really is. Come on, get in the ball. Yes! Save! Save! I mean, come on. You can't deny how good that looks. It's insane. Isn't it? That is a beautiful shiny.
To have a starter team of this calibre at main mission 5 was really just wild, and totally unexpected given that I'd only intended to find Eevee for this stretch of shiny hunting. But more than that, it gave me the perfect opening to start ploughing through the ranks of the ZA Royale. We earned our Challengers ticket for Night 1, beating our first opponent Yvonne in record quick time, as she was really no match for our ridiculous team at this point in the game. But the better part of this first win was that it paved the way for Wickstrom to evolve into a Curlier at level 20, followed by a shiny that I was never meant to have but I am so glad we were able to get, and that's Gallade. Just look at him. Next up in the Royale was Xavi, who was also no match for our dream team, although I did get to show off Gallade a little bit here as his Furfrou was a one-hit KO with Sacred Sword, which saw us get a boost again, this time to rank W. That beautiful display brought us up against Rintaro next, who had a team that I really admired in the form of the Elemental Monkeys, and I actually had to use all 3 of my team members to score a win this time. Beedrill took on his Simi-Sage, Sylveon took on his Simi-Seer, and Gallade annihilated his Simi-Poor to earn us rank V. It was starting to feel like a pretty standard start to life in Lumiose with all of these easy wins, but that was all about to change because as we exited Rintaro's restaurant, we were greeted by a mysterious Pokemon named Zygarde, who wanted to guide us to a nearby rooftop to show us something that we haven't yet encountered in Lumiose City. And that was a case of Rogue Mega Evolution. You see, whilst Mega Evolution itself has always been this special occurrence that can only happen when a trainer and Pokemon share a strong bond, recently in Lumiose, Pokemon have been Mega Evolving all on their own. Which, coupled with the excess of Mega Crystals seen throughout Lumiose, indicates a surge of Mega Energy in the city that's transforming them into these giant, superpowered threats. In this case, it's actually an Absol that introduces us to this phenomenon, and that's such a nice touch given that you only ever see an Absol when disaster looms, which, yeah, does not bode well for this city. but it does illustrate to us just how dire this situation might be. As worrying as that thought is, for now we just had to defeat it in battle to get it to calm down, and whilst we unfortunately did have to borrow AZ's Lucario to get the job done here, he does reward us with our own Mega Ring to do so. And that means that from here on out, we can wield the power of Mega Evolution with our own Pokemon. Which is such great timing, because whilst we've been able to calm this Absol, it really is just the tip of the Avalugg when it comes to the many tough opponents that Lumiose has to offer. A fact that's made abundantly clear when Vinny calls us the next morning to not only ask for a meeting about the events of the night before, but also to prove our worth by defeating him in battle. You see, it turns out that the ZA Royale isn't just a fun little competition, but rather an idea hatched by Quasartico to ascertain trainers who would be able to help with cases of rogue Mega Evolution, as their own employees simply weren't able to keep up with the sheer amount of cases. And whilst we did calm the Absol from the night before, Vinny's not going to let us in on the operation until he knows we're up to the task. So we're immediately into another tough fight, which I was actually a little nervous for this time around, given that I've still only got a skeleton team. But he turned out to be not too bad of an opponent in the end. Sylveon did run some support in this battle, but it all happened so fast that I can't really describe the intricacies of it using Wish to regain Gallade's HP later on, so we'll keep this one simple. Gallade pretty much swept his team. And that win takes us all the way up to rank F. Wow. I guess that means that it's finally time to address the Copperajah in the room. Or, well, one of them at least. The rank skip. And yeah, I know people weren't too keen on this, but do you want to know why I skimmed over those first 3 rank up matches in the ZA Royale? It's because they were basic. Which is fine as an introduction to the game, but if we didn't have this skip, I feel pretty certain that half of the adventure would just be boring. It'd be the same night over and over again with more basic trainers and uninspired teams as you quickly and easily bury their hopes and move on to the next rank. In contrast, the skip opens up some intense battles against skilled trainers who all have unique themes, new Mega Evolutions, and who actually have an impact on the city of Lumiose by the end of the game. So if you want me to be honest, I actually like the skip. But anyway, the more important detail from this win is the reveal from Vinny that Quasartico have been keeping these cases of rogue Mega Evolution secret from the public, and as they want to continue to keep them a secret and we're now qualified to take on any cases that arise thanks to our new rank, that means we're in, which calls for one of our first Team MZ strategy meetings. We'll be seeing these quite a bit from here on out as they occur each time a new case of rogue Mega Evolution appears, and whilst they're fun to take part in because the conversation almost always veers off topic, the outcome of these meetings is always the same. Leader, Naveen and Tawny will all help us in battle, but ultimately it's going to be up to us to take on all 3 cases of rogue Mega Evolution scattered across Lumiose. Which, yeah, is going to be tough if I don't start bolstering this team a little bit. So before we start, let's go and get some more firepower by adding another shiny Pokemon to the team. Now, for this one, I really wanted to hunt for a Pokemon that I'd had my eye on ever since the game launched, and that was Aurorus. I played through my entire non-shiny run of ZA during launch week with one of these majestic creatures, and it easily became one of my favourite team members. So when I found out that you could shiny hunt for it in this game, my mind was made up that I was going to hunt for this thing no matter what. But with all that said, what does the shiny hunting for Aurorus look like? Well, it's not in any of the wild zones, and it's not in any of the rooftops, and that's because there's only one place you can find this Pokemon, which is in the research lab. To begin, you just need to complete side mission 27 by exchanging a single fossil with a man named Reg on the 2nd floor. And once that's done, he'll exchange as many fossils as you'd like, so you can essentially just buy 20 or 30 of them and go wild. But the best part by far about all of this is that the autosave doesn't trigger after each exchange. That means that hard saving before exchanging any of your fossils with Reg will allow you to soft reset the game if you don't find a shiny to try all over again rather than buy more fossils, and that alone is what makes this shiny hunt possible. So this all sounds great, right? Well, yeah. But this is probably one of the more difficult, if not the most difficult shiny hunt in the whole game, and that's because of how time consuming it is to exchange the fossils. For example, there are shiny hunts in this game where you can see thousands of Pokemon within minutes, but with my 20 fossils, I was only able to see about 220 of them an hour. A statistic that was particularly bad news for me, because whilst I'd wished for some good luck here after going over odds with both of my first 2 Pokemon, this fossil exchange ended up being my longest shiny hunt of the whole run.
Oh! Oh my god, was that it? I think that was the... Oh my god, you don't understand. I have been at this for weeks. The one shiny hunt that I didn't want to go wrong in ZA was this one, and it went so wrong. But it doesn't matter now. It doesn't matter. Easily one of my favourite shinies I have ever found. What a beaut. I'm so happy with that. Do you know what I found Tyrunt and Tyrantrum in the Sword and Shield video, and I was like on a knife's edge as to whether I go for a more Aurorus instead. And I thought, no, I'll save it for a future video. You know, I'm sure at some point I'll get the opportunity to go for a more Aurorus, and oh, I'm so glad that I did, because it looks great in this game. I used Aurorus when I played this game for the first time back on stream in October on launch day, and it was amazing. It was such a fun Pokemon to use, and I knew straight away then, I was like, this is the video, this is the one where I go for Aurorus. So for the nickname, I have been thinking a little bit about this, and because it's an XY themed run, I do need to try and put something in from X and Y if I can. But also, DP Nuzlocke, who is like a good friend of mine through YouTube, he nicknamed his Tyrantrum after me in his shiny only ZA run. He called it Waif. And I really wanted to repay the favour, because BP's awesome, so thanks, dude. And so I came up with a bit of a weird nickname for this one. I was really hoping that it would be male because of this reason. But there was someone in X and Y called Mr. Bonding, and he gave out something called O-Powers. So I'm going to call this one Mr. B P, which is such a weird nickname. But I'm trying to be nice and give a shout out, and I'm also trying to make it fit into the theme of the run. So yeah, we're going to go with Mr. BP.
That was a lot, but I think in hindsight it was really worth it to bag that Aurorus. It's become one of my most prized shinies to date, and thanks to that 12,000 encounter nightmare, it also clocks in as one of my longest shiny hunts to date too. A fun fact about this shiny is that it took roughly 57 hours to find, which is actually 10 hours more than it took me to play through the entirety of Legends ZA during the game's launch week, and that really blew my mind a little bit when I worked it out. But as much as I'd love to carry on talking about just how long this shiny hunt took me, and how amazing Aurorus is, I'd actually left some dangerous rogue Mega Evolutions roaming the streets of Lumiose for over a month now whilst I've been stuck in that lab, so it was finally time to go and take them on. I used Aurorus for most of the Victory Bell and Slowbro fights because Mr. BP just matches up against them both so well. Although I did have to resort to using Gallade for the Camerupt fight, which was really just a brawl. And I know that we've already touched on what these mean for the story and characters, but I do just want to compliment them from a gameplay perspective for a second too whilst we watch the fireworks, because these Rogue Mega Evolution battles are genuinely some of the most amazing challenges I've seen in all of Pokemon. The best way I could describe them would be to ask you to imagine the Legends Arceus nobles if they'd just taken a boatload of... Oh, I'm being advised not to say that word. Well, I'm sure you know where I was going with that. Anyway, there are 15 of them in total outside of the tutorial Absol that we defeated earlier, and yet every single one of them manages to remain unique, with the AI behaving in very different ways depending on which Pokemon you face. Some of them will chase after you and try to attack both you and your Pokemon head on, but others will remain at a distance and try to launch attacks from far away. Others might even try to cover the field in hazards or send out multiple waves of a single attack to make it difficult to get close without your Pokemon sustaining severe damage. And in the most unique of cases, they'll even create decoys. The whole thing is just brilliant. Anyway, I thought those wins might score us a bit of a break from the action as we returned to Hotel Z victorious, but we were once again tracked down by Zygarde, who wanted a battle this time around. For defeating it, we get to keep this ordinary pebble, which is going to be super important later on, but in reality the most interesting part of this interaction is when a man named L, who's been travelling around with Zygarde, enters the courtyard. Now, if you're familiar with the lore of X and Y, then you'll immediately start drawing parallels between him and Lysander, and you'd be right to do so because, well, he is Lysander, but we just don't know it yet. And for that reason, I'm going to leave talking more about him until later in the journey because there's just so much to unpack with his character in this game. So for now, just know that he's working with Zygarde and he seems to be on the side of good as he explains to us about how we must become a trainer worthy of battling alongside this legendary Pokemon. And whilst that might be a tough ask for a trainer at rank F, we did just receive some news about our next opponent to help us ascend through the ranks, with our next promotion match being against Naveen's streamer hero, Canari. But this promotion match isn't going to be a quick and easy win like with our previous battles, because from here on out we're going to have to do a lot of legwork before we can even try to score a victory as we start to face the more important citizens of Lumiose who aren't always that easy to track down. In Canari's case, she barely leaves a room at Racine Construction because she's always live streaming, which according to Naveen means there's only one way to get her attention. We need to win a quiz that she hosts for her fans over at the electrical substation. So we head to the event, answer all of the questions correctly and win the quiz, and that wins us the right to ask Canari for a promotion match, which she agrees to. All sounds simple, right? Wrong, because it turns out that this hologram of Canari was actually Tarragon the whole time. He's just a proud grandfather who wants the world to see how awesome Canari is, so he's been doing these fan events himself, because Canari is such a gamer that she can't even be bothered to do a quiz for her fans by using holo technology of all things, even when it's from the comfort of her own room. God, it's like looking in a mirror. Anyway, the time for our promotion match was finally here, and Canari, well, wasn't actually too bad. I once again used Sylveon to run support in this battle by using Charm to lower the opponent's attack and Wish to rejuvenate my other Pokemon's HP. But Gallade was quite literally my sword in this fight as he earthquaked our way to victory once more, even taking down her Mega Electros without breaking too much of a sweat. Man, what a team member he's turning out to be. With another rank under our belt, we returned to Hotel Z for some more croissants and curry, and a rather sweet moment as the usually pragmatic Naveen gets, well, actually really excited about the autographed plush that Canari wanted us to pass on to him. I guess she does care after all. Whilst this was a brief respite from the non-stop action that we'd faced recently, we were immediately back to it in the morning with another Team MZ strategy meeting, as 3 more Rogue Mega Evolutions had surfaced throughout Lumiose. But thankfully, I chose this exact point to take a break from all of the battling anyway, because I really needed to go ahead and add another shiny or two to the team before we headed to take them on. My main reasoning here was that I still hadn't found a shiny that could Mega Evolve, and whilst it's true that I wanted Gallade to be my Mega Evolution in the long run, Wickstrom's Galladite is only unlocked after main mission 25, so I really needed something to give us a burst of power in the meantime. Enter Houndoom. Its Megastone is not only available super early in the game, but it's also got some insane stats with a beautiful shiny form. And best of all, it's actually super easy to find in Wild Zone 6. But that's not all, because whilst there are some really amazing Pokemon that can spawn here, from Baneri to Magikarp to Meditite, On one of the rooftops you can also find Swablu, and when I saw those I knew that I wanted to turn this into a double hunt for no reason other than the fact that Altaria's shiny is beautiful. But obviously with all of this running around to try and hunt for both of them, I was going to be spawning in a lot more than just my targets, and after going through 3 pretty difficult and awkward shiny hunts previously, this wild zone was really the first time that I started to see what all of the fuss was about when it comes to shiny hunting in ZA.
I'm sure I just heard a shiny noise. It's Canari. That was so fast. Oh, what? 2 phases already? Are you serious? What? It's a Magikarp. Oh my god. I go like a full month without finding any shinies and then I get 2 in about half an hour? I just can't believe how fast both of them were. Ron, welcome back. The hunt is going okay. I haven't found a shiny in a suspiciously long amount of time. We're at 2,000 now. Is there anything over the side? Oh, that Meditite is shiny. I just called it. I think it's an alpha as well. Oh, nice. That is a good find, actually. I'm really glad, Ron, that you asked how the hunt was going. I mean, it's not the alpha I wanted. But I do love Meditite shiny, and for it to be an alpha, I'm happy with that. It is another phase. And we are getting a crazy amount of phases now. That is our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our 7th phase for this shiny. You ready for this? Bam! No! Yeah, that's 10 phases now. That's 10 phases. There are 3 Canari, and I've found all 3 of them. But there are 4 Houndour Houndoom, and I haven't found any. There are 3 Swablu, and I haven't found any. There are 2 Meditite, I found both of those. There are 2 Magikarp, I found both of those. I'm just like, at what point? At what point is this just not, you know, not fair? Me and my wife went to the Lake District in the UK on like a... It was like a train journey, and we stopped at a chippy in Edinburgh. Oh no, not the Lake District. What am I talking about? This wasn't the Lake District, this was Scotland. Do you know what? What's really annoying is I've just seen the shiny. I've just seen the shiny as I get where Edinburgh was it was in the completely wrong place. Thanks for that. Thanks for that, Houndour. You've made me look a fool. You've made me look a fool. Why? Guys, I do know where Edinburgh is. Okay, I promise. I know it's in Scotland. Okay? I'm not a complete idiot. It looks like Edinburgh, Mabel is about to evolve. Beautiful. That is awesome, isn't it? That is genuinely so cool. I really thought this would wake up the second I got close to it. That is a 10 out of 10. I should be a photographer. I don't know what I'm doing in the corporate world. Oh, congrats for it. Just reached 1,000 encounters for Pachirisu. Very nice. Just watched the reaction. Amazing comedic timing. I know. Literally. I can't believe that I got Edinburgh in the complete wrong place in the country. But... Oh! What is it with Edinburgh? Every time. Every time I talk about Edinburgh, a shiny appears. What? Edinburgh confirmed? What is happening? Hi. Hi there. Swablu. Yay! Are we ready? This is a beautiful shiny. This is in my top 10, I think. I really love Altaria's shiny. It's so good. It's unreal. What a beautiful, beautiful shiny.
After those two beautiful finds, it's at this point where I'd usually talk a little bit about how awesome Houndoom and Altaria are. But I think this is actually the perfect time to address our second Copperager in the room instead. And that's what I think about the shiny hunting in this game. Prior to this hunt, I couldn't fully understand what people meant about just how crazy the shiny hunting is, but now that I've got a much better picture, I've got to admit that I really just don't agree with anyone who thinks that ZA ruined shinies. Sure, it might be easier to find shinies in this game than in others, I can't disagree with that, but what I would say is, what's wrong with that? I started shiny hunting with Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, and whilst that's a game that's pretty well known for being an easy one to hunt in, it did something really important for a shiny hunting newbie like me. It got me started. It showed me how fun it was to hunt for shinies, and it taught me the values of patience and perseverance, so much so that I actually went on to hunt in way more difficult games. In fact, without that gateway game, the simple truth is that I wouldn't even have a channel. I wouldn't have got to be part of such a fun and burgeoning community, and I wouldn't have had nearly as much fun gaming over the last few years as I have done. So for me, ZA giving another person that same opportunity to come and join in on the fun only seems like a good thing. And if you really don't like how common the shinies are now, you can choose to make things more difficult for yourself. I mean, a lot of you probably clicked on this video and assumed that I would have been heading straight to Wild Zone 3 to find a full team of shinies in an hour, but I haven't. In fact, even though I was stuck in that lab for a full month trying to find a basic 1 in 4096 shiny Amora, I could have taken it even further if I wanted to, because the odds of finding a shiny Alpha Amora would have been 1 in 409,600, which would have taken ages to find. So, I'm not trying to say that you can't dislike shiny hunting in this game, because obviously you can. But I just don't think that looking at something like Wild Zone 3 and then tarring the whole game with that same brush is a fair thing to do, because it's clearly more nuanced than that. Anyway, let's get back to the action. As you'll recall, we now had 3 new Rogue Mega Evolutions to take on. But thankfully I'd chosen 2 new team members who were perfectly matched against them in Houndoom and Altaria. Mega Beedrill was up first, and whilst it looks just as cool as it did back in the day, it's also still got pretty poor defences. Compare that to Houndoom, which has sky high special attack and can spit flames, and well, I think you know what happened here. Mega Bayonet was up next, and this one is probably my favourite Rogue Mega of the lot because it can generate those decoys I mentioned earlier, but it does have a tell because the real one glows. So Houndoom finished this one up pretty quickly too. Mega Hawlucha was up last, and whilst I did have to switch things up here to avoid some embarrassment for Houndoom, that gave me a chance to use Altaria in its debut flight, as it was easily able to take on the Luchador and emerge victorious. But there's once again no time to rest, because whilst I would love an actual bit of downtime before our next ZA Royale opponent, there really isn't any. As we return to Hotel Z, our phone pings pretty much immediately for our next promotion match, which means that we're off to track down Ivor, the leader of the Fist of Justice, who's going to be our next roadblock. And he is one hell of a roadblock, not because of his overwhelming size like you might think, but actually because he takes us on a wild goose chase throughout the city to find his sister Gwyn, which takes forever. We first head to Emma's bureau to see if she can help, before retracing her steps to listen in on conversations, which helps to tip us off that she and Canari are pretty close. And that tracks because we actually saw Gwyn at the quiz earlier on, which is a detail that I really liked when I played this through for a second time. Anyway, after a lot of running around, we finally tracked her down to the sewers, where it turns out that she's just hidden herself away to get some peace and quiet from Ivor and his destructive personality. And as much as he's my favourite character in ZA because of this, it is true that Ivor doesn't really care for a lot of stuff besides being strong, destroying city property, and advocating for the abolishment of wild zones so that Pokemon and people can live together freely. So Gwyn ends up dealing with a lot of the aftermath, whether that's broken phones, broken gates, or unhappy people. But there is still hope for him yet, as you can tell that he's already making a conscious effort when we return to the dojo. And whilst the quest to get here was long, it was so worth it, because my favourite theme in the whole game was about to drop. I know everybody raves about Jacynth's theme, and I've got to agree that it is pretty amazing, but man, Ivor's theme will never cease to hype me up. It is just, it's brilliant. And to be fair, whilst I'm at it and the battle is raging on anyway, I think I'd have to say that Legends ZA does have one of the best soundtracks in all of Pokemon. As a shiny hunter, I do think that it could have done with a bit more variety in the ambient soundtracks, because it does get a little bit tedious listening to those same tracks over and over again whilst wandering the city, but even those give me the warmest feeling inside when I hear them start up. And beyond that, every single character theme or battle theme is just unreal. From Canari to Ivor to Jacinth to Elle to Corbeau, the whole soundtrack is a real 10 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned. But that brings our battle with Ivor to a close, and thanks to Sylveon, Altaria and the music itself helping to hype me up, it was a pretty resounding victory all in all, as we moved up to rank D and headed back to Hotel Z to get some much needed rest. The next morning we woke to find Naveen alone downstairs, who was happy to finally be granted some peace and quiet as nothing seemed to be going on. Yes, finally, some downtime. Honestly, guys, I have just been back to back to back so far, and I just don't know how I would cope if, someone were to walk in the room after all the craziness of late and say that there was another huge thing going on today. Oh, hey leader. Sorry, what's that? So yeah, it turns out that Tawny decided to borrow a lot of money from an organisation called the Rust Syndicate before disappearing, and as that loan came with some pretty crazy interest terms that obviously haven't been repaid, we've now got to go and work things out with them. But as much as I'm joking around here about being thrown into the deep end once more, this is actually a really great stretch of story. It all starts with us heading to the Rust Syndicate's building to meet with a man named Philippe, who appears to be the boss around here at first, before the real brains behind the operation is revealed when we enter the building and head further in. And that's Corbeau. We'll talk a little bit more about him soon, as there's going to be more to reveal, but for now he just wants to illustrate to us that if we can't repay the loan Tawny took with money, then we'll be repaying it by working for them, which is officially the oldest trick in the book. And then he just boots us out as we slink back to Hotel Z to deliver the news to Tawny and Naveen before holding another strategy meeting to determine our course of action, as 3 new Rogue Mega Evolutions have also appeared around Lumiose. Man, there's a lot going on right now. And I promise that I'm not using this as a segue into shiny hunting, but it sure feels like we could use some more muscle on the team, doesn't it? Yeah, I lied, I'm totally using this as a segue into another shiny hunt, but I didn't really lie about the muscle part, because my next team member was a beast. Aggron is always a shiny that I've wanted to pick up, but I don't think it could be better timed, and there's a few good reasons for that. For starters, Aggron feels like an almost natural counter to the Rust Syndicate's poison types, but also, Wild Zone 14 has only just opened up, and this zone will spawn in up to 5 of either Aron or Luron each time that you fast travel to it, which means that this should be a very quick shiny hunt. It's like I said earlier, with the shiny hunting in this game you can sometimes choose how difficult you want it to be, and on this occasion, well, I just wanted my shiny Aggron. So let's roll the clip and see just how quickly I found this one. I just did 2,000 encounters in 18 minutes. 18 minutes! That is crazy. I'm hoping for a shiny. And I've got one. It's a Luron. Nice. Have I got any others? Oh, I have. I've got a Drillbur as well. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, hang on. I need to get out of here. I need to save. That is honestly crazy. That is one of the fastest shiny hunts I've ever done in any game. Any game. That is wild. 2,000 encounters in 18 minutes and it got me 2 shinies. There's Drillbur. And here is Luron, who is just going to get in the ball. Nope. Luron is not just going to get in the ball. Just get in the ball, man. Come on. Beautiful. Don't even need to look. Not an alpha. But I mean, just look at him. Wait, what? Oh, with a Pidgey. Oh, okay. Okay, surprise third shiny. It wasn't a lamppost shiny though, which is kind of annoying because the lamppost counter has been on the overlay for ages now, and it's still at 0. I do not have a single lamppost shiny. But, oh well. I need a nickname for Luron. Oh, do you know who he is? I'm going to say this and you're going to immediately agree with me. He is a Tierno. Watch this, you ready? And I know he's going to be evolved into an Aggron. Tell me that is not Tierno energy. It's too good, man. I mean, damn. In the span of just 12 days, I'd gone from sitting in the Pokemon lab seeing just 220 fossils an hour to a shiny hunt where I could see 2,000 Pokemon every 20 minutes. And whilst that is such a crazy turnaround, I can genuinely say that I still really treasure this shiny Aggron. Not just because I got to take this cool family picture with Tierno and Leader, but also because Aggron has one of my favourite Mega Evolutions in all of Pokemon. It's this kaiju-inspired hunk of pure steel, and whenever I see it, my mind goes straight to some of my favourite armoured prehistoric creatures, like the Ankylosaurus or pretty much any of the ceratopsid dinosaurs. And with 3 new rogue Mega Evolutions to take on, Aggron had a debut right away against Mega Mawile. But whilst it did take a while for Tierno to whittle it down, partly because I forgot to apply the Mega Stone for it to Mega Evolve, this was a pretty straightforward matchup all in all. Barbaracle seemed a bit more menacing with its newly acquired fighting type, so I opted to go with Sylveon for this one, which was a great decision because this fight was over in practically no time. And finally we had Mega Ampharos, which seemed like a great matchup for Mega Aggron, who was doing great to begin with. Its HP was getting lower and lower with moves like Earthquake and Dig hitting it hard, but all of a sudden Tierno was down. So close. Sylveon finished this one up in the end, but man, Aggron really did great in that battle. And with those rogue Megas calmed, it looks like it's finally time to get on with those jobs for the Rust Syndicate as Corbo calls us up to demand some help. But we soon learn that all of these jobs are actually just Good Samaritan work. We help a resident clear their building of some mischievous ghost Pokemon, we clear the sewers of any Mega Crystals that have formed which could become a problem, and we scare off a couple of people who are preaching to kids about how to battle correctly. My point being that obviously the Rust Syndicate are actually kind of a Robin Hood-esque group. Sure, their methods might be questionable, but at the end of the day they'll do anything to protect Lumiose and help its residents out, and that's a mission statement that comes straight from Corbo himself, who we get to learn a bit more about as we complete these missions. He's this genius of a man who favoured some curry with Lysander of all people as a young kid before going on to build an empire by starting up all kinds of businesses and gaining a following from people like Philippe through his sheer ingenuity alone. And all of that is even more impressive when you start to realise that he was probably an orphan who started out with nothing, judging from the way he talks about his childhood. Maybe that's why he shows some compassion towards Tawny and Team MZ as a whole by stopping by the hotel after all the work we put in to stay for the night and pay Tawny the most generous tip in existence, all so that she could repay the loan immediately. Or maybe it wasn't. After all, he is kind of hard to read. Anyway, I'm actually getting ahead of myself with that one, as we learn before that happens that Corbo is our next opponent in the ZA Royale. And this battle is an interesting one, because whilst he's mainly known for his poison types, he does actually have a Gyarados in there too, which is a nice nod to his history with Lysander. But either way, this one was over pretty quickly, as I was proven right in the end to look for some extra muscle, with Megragron dealing the final blow in this matchup and moving us up to rank C. But before we move on, all of the Rust Syndicate's efforts to help out the residents of Lumiose has me feeling like we should probably do the same. So let's take a quick moment here to talk about the side questing in this game, because these optional missions are something that I would genuinely recommend every player completes in order to get the full ZA experience. They might not seem like much at first glance, and some of them will genuinely leave you wondering why you even bothered. But for me, this isn't necessarily about how interesting they are to complete, it's about the impression that they leave on you afterwards. You see, when we arrive in Lumiose City, we're just a tourist, so to me, the idea of our character being super invested in saving the day I don't know, it just feels a bit shallow to begin with. There's quite a few times where our character will say things like, "I'm going to be the one to win this battle and save Lumiose," with the conviction of someone who's lived there for their whole life. But when you think about it, just how much sense does that actually make? I mean, I know that we've built friendships with the other members of Team MZ and met quite a few of the larger-than-life characters from the city already, but in general, we don't really know anything about the regular people of this city. You know, the ones we're actually trying to save? The people who have built entire lives here and even buried loved ones within its walls. The people who stayed after Lysander fired the ultimate weapon, and the Pokemon who have come to call this place home in the aftermath. But these side quests give all of them a spotlight to show us just why we should be so invested in being that saviour of Lumiose. And occasionally there's an absolute gem in there, like this one at the museum where you have to track down some lost Spupa and in the process stumble across a whole exhibition dedicated to Hisui, which includes so many props and actual pieces of history from Legends Arceus, really paying tribute to what came before and even giving us a bit of mystery into what became of some of the characters, like Volo, who is almost hinted at being alive. Sorry, we were talking about side quests, weren't we, and I just got totally distracted by Hisui. I did warn you that Legends Arceus still hasn't given my heart back. Anyway, with another rollercoaster of story and a mountain of side quests over, our next day actually started on a lighter note, with a bit of relaxation for Team MZ at a local coffee truck. But if you've been following my jokes all video about how we never get a moment to relax in ZA, then you'll know that this serene peace is about to be interrupted, and this time it's by a girl named Laban, who is a part of the Society of Battle Connoisseurs. The SBC are basically the upper class of Lumiose who want to share their love for Pokemon battling with everyone, but in a sort of typically snobbish way. They're led by a lady named Jacinth, or Jasant. I have googled this, I've tried to get the pronunciation right, but I am going to go with Jacinth because it's just easier for me. There's probably going to be people who aren't happy with this either way. There'll be people who will read Jacinth, will hear me say Jacinth and will say, "Oh, why didn't you say Jasant? That's the proper pronunciation." And then there'll be people who don't know the proper pronunciation if it is Jasant, and they'll say, "You idiot, it's not Jasant, why are you making it up?" So I can't win on this one, guys. I'm going to go with Jacinth, and that is my final answer. Anyway, Jacinth wants us to attend their next meetup, and so it's off to a local tailor to get ourselves a fancy outfit for the occasion. Which would have been really cool, but ends up feeling completely pointless when we arrive at the hotel and literally everybody else is dressed exactly the same as they usually would be, including Tawny. I mean, do you ever remember when your school had a non-uniform day, but you forgot and turned up to school in your uniform, and then you felt super embarrassed because everybody else had their own clothes on, but you had to wear a uniform? So it turns out that this little get-together is for a tournament in Jacinth's name, and she's invited, well, pretty much everyone that we've faced so far to watch us all duke it out, which is something that I was so excited for. But it's at this exact moment that Vinny calls and informs us about some more rogue Mega Evolutions, so we have to bail. An action that does not sit well with Jacinth, who actually tracks us back to Hotel Z and ends up attending our strategy meeting for far too long without being noticed. I mean, Jesus, how on earth haven't our characters perished in the rogue mega battles if our peripheral vision is this bad? As Jacinth decided to leave us with a warning, coupled with the fact that we now had 3 new rogue mega evolutions that we had to take on, I figured this would probably be a good time to go and pick up another shiny team member. And thankfully this one's a pretty simple hunt too, because the Pokemon that I wanted was... Froakie. It sits atop a pillar in Wild Zone 16, and no matter which way you decide to hunt for it, it's really not too bad to get a hold of. In my case, I decided to fast travel to Zone 16 and then walk up to the gate to see if my shiny had spawned in, and whilst that isn't the most efficient method, I just didn't really care. I've learned throughout this adventure that I really just prefer seeing the shiny actually spawn in compared to fast travelling over and over again and then checking the zone like I did for Aggron, or by doing something like bench resets. And by doing it this way, I wasn't just spawning in Froakie, but Phalanx too, which I thought would be a cool phase to get my hands on. As much as I love these little guys though, I wasn't actually intending to replace any of my team members with a shiny Phalanx. Well, I mean, not unless something amazing happened.
Oh my god. That's a shelf of Phalanx. Oh, that is amazing. The boys! Okay, I officially love them, and I think they are going to be joining my team, because I can't not have them now. I can't believe that I got an alpha. Finally some, like, proper good luck. I mean, it's a shame that we haven't found Froakie today. There's still time, but I don't think we're going to find Froakie. But that is, as silver linings go, that's a pretty bloody good one, isn't it? Shalfa Phalanx. Beautiful. Beautiful shiny, beautiful mega. Beautiful alpha. Although you are currently stabbing me a little bit.
I really don't think you can turn down a Shalfa when it just falls into your lap like that, especially with a Pokemon as cool as Phalanx. And so, I couldn't help but add Karina to the team for the long haul after this find. But if you'll recall, I was actually here to find a Froakie, and whilst I'd just found a shiny that I think we can all agree is pretty damn rare, my luck was somehow about to get even better.
Oh my god, is that it? Guys, I got Shalfa Phalanx like... Was it like 100 encounters ago? Oh, you are a beaut. In the rain at night, with the tower in the background. My boy. Right, I've got to be really careful now. We cannot mess this up. Okay, we cannot mess this up. Right, turn away. That is a mic drop. That is a mic drop moment, that. Oh, look at him. He's so cute. I think Frogadier is kind of more like Froakie, but then Greninja is just on another level of cool. Pretty cool. I do like Frogadier. But not as much as I like Greninja. That's unbelievable. That is such a good shiny. And you know what as well? It's weird because this is the same. I think it's the same model that was in Scarlet and Violet. I didn't like Greninja in Scarlet and Violet. I thought it looked odd. But I think it's different in ZA because he's obviously going to be able to run around a lot more. And like, the live battling system will make him look better.
I cannot even begin to tell you how long I've wanted a shiny Greninja for. I mean, this one literally goes back to the pre-channel days where I would sit and watch Ash and Greninja dominate the Kalos League. And now I'm heading into the final stretch of ZA with one of my very own. But I wouldn't discover just how awesome Greninja can be in this game for a little while longer, as I opted to use Aurorus in the fight against our first of the new Rogue Mega Evolutions, which was Altaria. And yeah, as you can imagine with the type advantage, this fight was over supremely quickly. Mega Frostlass was up next though, and this was actually my favourite Rogue Mega Evolution battle in the whole game, as I finally got to see Mega Gallade in action, where Wickstrom was a force to be reckoned with. After a Swords Dance, he was able to shred through Frostlass's HP in mere seconds, and the best part about this was that the cooldown on his moves was almost non-existent. That meant that I could fire off a Night Slash, Psycho Cut and Leaf Blade, and by the time Leaf Blade had landed, Night Slash was already good to go again. Just a truly unbelievable performance, which even continued into our final bout, this time against Mega Venusaur. I swapped out Night Slash and Leaf Blade for Ice Punch and Fire Punch, which is such a great feature in ZA by the way. I mean, I just love being able to swap moves on a dime. And that change meant that just like with Frostlass, this fight was over in absolutely no time at all. But as amazing as it was to defeat those Rogue Mega Evolutions without even breaking a sweat, we still had Jacynth's tournament to attend, and as she'd been hounding us after each Rogue Mega victory, it was pretty clear by now that she was about to do something bad. Enter Laban and something called a Jacynth Zone, which essentially forces us to stay in the courtyard surrounding the hotel whilst she battles us into submission. A move made all the more funny because we were actually on our way to the tournament anyway. But it is worthwhile because we get to see the true Laban here. She's a fighter who seeks out only the strongest of opponents, but after losing a battle to Jacynth a couple of years ago where she promised to be her servant if she lost, well, I think you can fill in the gaps. It's a nice bait and switch because whilst Laban is incredibly fierce on the surface compared to Jacynth, who is the embodiment of both calm and class, they're actually a lot more alike than you'd think, with Jacynth being more than a fierce opponent herself. And it's finally time to check out just how strong she is, as we headed to Hotel Rishizme to finally take part in her tournament, which is really just pure fun. To start, we take on a few of our old opponents, from Canari to Ivor, and then finally Corbeau. And whilst we watch the fireworks, I think this is a pretty decent time to talk about the new live battle system, because whilst I do really enjoy it, I also don't totally love it. I mean, it's so awesome to see Pokemon battles come to life after 30 years of playing this franchise, and I love how in the moment it all feels because it does make each fight so immersive. But I also feel like that strength is a bit of a downside, primarily because of just how little time you have to react, which made me kind of just spam the attack button over and over again in certain fights. There's definitely a bit of strategy to employ, with supportive moves like Reflect, Light Screen and Wish all being ones that I used quite often throughout my adventure, but I found that it was in the Rogue Mega battles that I felt more comfortable using those, because I almost always had a bit more time to work out a plan of attack. In contrast, the trainer battles felt like being on a plane that's going through turbulence, and it really did feel like I just had to go for it to get the win, rather than set up or try to play defensively. I mean, I'd certainly be interested in hearing what you guys think, so please do let me know in the comments how this new battle end system went down for you. In the meantime, I'll get to battling Jacinthe herself in the final of this tournament. Or I would do if Zygarde didn't turn up and demand a battle at the last second. It gets a nice boost in power thanks to the cells that Elle has been collecting for it, but at 50% it's still not really strong enough to withstand more than a couple of hits from Auroras. And so this was another easy fight, even if the cutscenes did have me mesmerised for a second there. So now it's time for the big event. Jacinthe is definitely the biggest threat we've faced so far, but I did have a few tricks up my sleeve for this one. Greninja's Water Shuriken shreds through pretty much anything it comes up against, so her Carbink, Mawile and Auroras were all out for the count pretty quickly. But this was actually Mega Aggron's time to shine, as Tierno took to the field. Her Gardevoir was squashed flat by a truly monstrous Heavy Slam, and her Mega Clefable couldn't even hang on from a single hit. I ain't no servant. And that win takes us all the way up to rank B, which means that we are truly almost at an end in this adventure. So, with time running out for both Prism Tower and the city of Lumiose, let's get cracking on our final 3 Rogue Mega Evolutions of this journey. And boy am I glad to say that, because I've had one hell of a time trying to fit them into this script. Mega Starmie was up first, and to be honest this one wasn't really too bad, as Mega Gallade once again slashed and clawed his way to victory. Mega Tyranitar was a little more difficult to handle because it's got such high defences, but I opted to go with Mega Phalanx to take this one on, as Karina and I were able to break through those defences and score a win. And Mega Dragonite was the easiest of the lot, which would usually have surprised me, but when you realise that it's 4 times weak to Ice-type moves and I've got an Auroras with sky-high special attack, I guess this one actually isn't surprising at all. So, with a somewhat anticlimactic final set of Rogue Mega Evolution battles completed, we were now finally off to see who our final rank up match in the whole ZA Royale would be, and that turned out to be a somewhat unknown entity named Grisham. So, with no leads and also no time to lose, we headed off to find out more information from both Emma and Mabel. It's a bit of a go here and do this kind of lead up to his reveal, and along the way we find out that Team Fleur could actually still be active in the city, as Grisham was part of a next generation of Team Fleur members that were designed to carry on the ideals of the organisation after Lysander's fall from grace. But after he asks us to meet him and his associate Grizel at Lysander's old cafe, we find out that it's not quite as black and white as all that. Because whilst Grisham and Grizel might still be a part of Team Fleur, they're not at all like what we saw from Lysander back in X and Y. Here, Grisham talks about how Team Fleur gave people a place to come together and make the world a more beautiful place, and whilst that's the exact sentiment that Lysander expressed back in X and Y, the tone of it here couldn't be more different, which is a reveal that I particularly loved. One of my biggest complaints about Lysander as a villain was always that his goal of making the world a more beautiful place just felt far too vague, and as a result he kind of came across like a bit of a cartoon villain who was evil for the sake of being evil. But after hearing from Grisham about how that idea was originally meant to be for the good of humanity by giving more to society than you take, before Lysander twisted its meaning because of how disillusioned he grew with his originally philanthropic goals, man, it all just clicked into place so perfectly for me. That sentiment was vague because it was meant to be. It was really just a front for Lysander to guide the world in whatever direction he wanted it to go in, whether that was by amassing followers by becoming a selfless leader who gives to the masses, or by twisting it into something far worse. And that is a truly fantastic reveal. Maybe it was obvious back in X and Y and I just wasn't ready to appreciate them yet, but either way I'm certainly ready to now. Anyway, after these reveals we head down into Lysander Labs to start sifting through the data, and down here you can find all kinds of cool stuff. From the cell that held AZ 5 years ago, to samples of the stones that line the way to Geosinge Town, to the final room which kind of recaps what Team Fleur discovered when it comes to the ultimate weapon. But the biggest reveal here comes from Elle himself, who confirms to us that AZ created the device that dwells within Prism Tower, which he believes awakened when Lysander fired the ultimate weapon 5 years ago. On that day, Zygarde saved Lysander from certain death, which ironically gave him a similar kind of immortality to AZ because of the ultimate weapon's energy, and it also managed to protect most of the surrounding areas too, but in the process exhausted its power. Which isn't good news for Lumiose given that AZ's new device is clearly winding up. He'll try to gather the remainder of Zygarde's cells, but in the meantime we need to get back to Hotel Z to have a very honest talk with AZ. And listen, I know I've been talking about the lore for a little while now, but this really is just a mark on how great the story of ZA is when you get to these closing chapters. I've been on the edge of my seat for a good while now, and that's a feeling that continues when AZ launches into this grand explanation of what's really been going on. We already know that AZ and his Floette experienced a terrible war 3,000 years ago, and that AZ created the device that grants life to bring Floette back after she lost hers in that war. We also know that AZ, much like Lysander, then grew disillusioned with humankind after the event and turned his device into the ultimate weapon to end the war, claiming the lives of many Pokemon to do so. We know that Floette then left AZ, horrified at the fact that she had been brought back to life at the expense of so many others, and has really only returned to him now because she knows that something's going on with the tower. But what we didn't know until now is that AZ created a second device named Ange, which lies deep within Prism Tower and was designed to share the eternal life that AZ had given to Floette. He thinks, much like L, that when the ultimate weapon was fired, Ange awoke and began emitting mega energy all on its own, and that brings us to right now where a mega evolved Floette would be able to control the tower, if a trainer can be found with the power to do so. It's a lot to take in, and to be honest, I'm kind of with Naveen on this one, because AZ isn't just a complicated character. He's someone who committed awful atrocities, even if he's regretful of them now. You know when I was back in Lysander Labs and I mentioned those stones that lined the road to Geosinge Town? Well, those stones usually emit energy, but when the ultimate weapon is activated, they actually change and begin to absorb energy instead. And the reason they do that is because AZ designed this weapon to directly absorb the life force of Pokemon that he tied to those rocks, which is just barbaric. And then, even after he'd done all of those awful things and Floette had returned to him, he still decided to wipe out so many more lives by turning the device into a weapon. I mean, God. I know he seems like this sweet old man here, but when you come to that realization, it's pretty hard to look past it, don't you think? Anyway, after that truly tense series of events, I think this is probably a good time to go and have our final battle against Grisham to cool off a little bit. Or that's what I would say if I hadn't planned one final secret shiny hunt for this adventure. You see, whilst I was down in Lysander Labs, there was one Pokemon that really caught my eye, and after seeing that it's actually pretty easy to find, I really wanted to round out our team with a shiny Metagross. But funnily enough, what should have been one of the most easy shiny hunts of this whole adventure ended up becoming one of the most paranoia inducing, because the way in which you can find a shiny Beldum involves transporting around on these warp panels. If you head through the labyrinth that is Lysander Labs to spawn in the 2 Beldum in this room and then fast travel back to the entrance to use this warp panel, it'll send you to this room which is close enough in proximity to the Beldum to get them to spawn in. And that sounds simple, right? Well, every guide that I watched said that it was, but that you had to listen out for the Beldum to make sure they'd spawned in first. I thought I'd heard them and so I spent hours on hours warping around, but I couldn't seem to find my shiny Beldum. And when I started back up on the next stream and spent a few more hours doing this, I still couldn't seem to spawn one in. I thought maybe I was just getting unlucky, but when we turned off all the in-game noises, nobody, including me, could seem to hear the Beldum. And that's where the paranoia started, because whilst the method was clearly correct, I had absolutely nothing to show for it and no proof whatsoever that it was actually working. Until a couple of viewers who had found their shiny Beldum in the same way assured me that it was. So I just had to keep on doing this in the hope that my shiny Beldum was quite literally just around the corner. Please let it be shiny, come on. I deserve this. We deserve this, guys. Oh! It's shiny. Yes!
Oh my god, we've got one. We're just going to do this for a little while. I'm going to like throw a Pokeball and then run away. Never mind. Second Premier Ball. I know it's like 3 times boosted or whatever, but really cool. I knew today was going to be a good day, you know. I woke up and the sun was shining. The weather was good. I knew it was going to be a good day. I just didn't know it was going to be this good. But this means that my Legends ZA shiny only adventure is pretty much at an end. This is the final shiny that I wanted to find before I complete the main story and I move on to the DLC and other games and all that good stuff. So it means 2 things. It means number 1, that counter on the screen for the lamppost shiny has remained at 0. I've not found 1 lamppost shiny in my entire ZA shiny only adventure, which is pretty mad actually. But after, when did I start this adventure? Was it like early December? I think it was like the 29th of November, maybe like 1st of December. Every stream since then, I have worn this jacket. And today, I finally get to take this jacket off. I've worn it every stream to stick to the bit of Team MZ. But I think we can now officially retire it. You ready for this? This is the peak of my Legends ZA shiny only adventure. Okay. No. Too good. That is one of the best shinies. I knew what Metagross looked like as a shiny anyway, but specifically in this game, because of like the fact that they can walk around in the overworld and stuff. That is insane, isn't it? Not just one of the best shinies, but one of the best models in this game as well. Like the way the legs just like stomp around. I think we can call that one a successful shiny hunt, guys. Okay, now I'm done with the shiny hunting in this adventure. And that really is for the best, because I don't think there's much that could possibly top a shiny Metagross at this point. So, with our final shiny team member in hand, we finally headed off to Centrico Plaza to take on Grisham, and this is a battle steeped in emotion. He's fighting to get to rank A, not because he dreams of world domination like the Team Fleur of old, but because he dreams of redemption. And that absolutely comes across when we take him on in this battle. His team is filled with walking tanks, including a Mega Charizard X, and whilst he wasn't able to defeat us in this fight, I think it's pretty clear that this version of Team Fleur deserves a second chance. At the end of the day though, it was always our destiny to reach rank A, and so after ranking up for one final time, we headed back to Hotel Z to reunite with the others. Which turns out to be perfect timing as the hour is finally upon us. Prism Tower has finally shrugged off the hastily constructed barrier that once surrounded it and is now aglow with an energy that is both beautiful and deadly. You might assume that we'd be taking Floette to the top given that we've recently reached rank A, but amongst the backdrop of a neon pink Prism Tower we actually have one more opponent to face, and that's Tawny. She recently climbed to rank A too, and whilst I haven't really talked about any of the battles we've had with her over the course of this adventure, she's actually a really great trainer. At this point, I've got a max EV trained team with optimal natures and really good movesets, but this was still a really fierce battle, and I had to use every single team member to push through and get the win. But in the end, Tawny couldn't really hold on against the might of Wickstrom, and I'm pretty happy that he was the one to deal the final blow in this battle, given that he really has been my main partner Pokemon since almost the very beginning. However, as amazing as it was to face Tawny at this level, it really wasn't a battle that even needed to happen, as she points out that she should be the one to take Floette to the top. Whilst it's not exactly gratifying to win the battle and come out of it with no reward, I must say that she's 100% right when she talks about how we should be the one to defend Lumiose with the help of Zygarde if her and Floette can't stop the tower.
Not just because we've been building this special bond with Zygarde throughout the game, but also because Tawny and Floette were always meant to be. She was the one who stepped in when AZ couldn't battle, commanding Floette and calming the first case of rogue Mega Evolution in the city. She's been the one to help anywhere she can throughout Lumiose and really put her own wants and needs second, not just for AZ and her friends, but for everyone else in the city too. AZ told us that Floette would choose the trainer she wanted to Mega Evolve with, and her agreement with Tawny here really just says all that we need to know. But it's too late. Whilst Floette and Tawny do manage to scale Prism Tower and attempt to avoid catastrophe, the damage is already done. And in one of the grandest set pieces Pokemon has ever put to screen, Ange comes to life and lays waste to the area surrounding Prism Tower, permanently changing Lumiose City and marking the second tragedy in the last 5 years. Now it's up to us to try and make it to Zygarde in a last-ditch effort to make things right. And this is honestly one of my favourite things that Pokemon has ever done. You see, throughout the course of our adventure in Lumiose, we've met all kinds of different people, and now those same people have to come together to aid us in our fight to save the city, as we all scramble through the wreckage that Ange has made and battle countless rogue Mega Evolutions along the way. Each and every one of these people had their own vision for Lumiose and their own ideas on what the perfect city would look like, which was often expressed through the wish they wanted to have granted. But in this final stretch, it's not any one person's vision that saves Lumiose. It's unity in the face of overwhelming odds that makes this final stretch possible. And perhaps even more beautiful is that when we do finally reach Zygarde, we learn that we're going to be finishing this adventure how we started it, as it's revealed to us that the final Zygarde cell to transform this creature into its complete form was the one that's been with us from the very start. And with that, it's finally time to take on the tower. This fight involves us battling against the vines that tear out of the ground at the base of Prism Tower, whilst Zygarde protects us from any airborne attacks by Ange. But every time we do manage to score a victory against these vines, we're actually able to take control of Zygarde and launch an attack on the tower from the skies. And whilst it does just involve clicking a button in what is essentially a quick time event, I've got to admit that I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's a fight that feels really claustrophobic on the ground as we take cover behind rubble and just launch attack after attack on these vines. But man, when you do get up there with Zygarde, it's so rewarding to get that bigger picture and unleash a barrage onto the actual target. Sylveon was once again a great support in this fight, as I was often able to take cover and use Wish to regain HP for other members of the team. But in reality, every single one of them contributed to the tower's downfall throughout this fight, until finally Zygarde could finish the job by launching a Core Enforcer attack directly onto the tower, imprinting it with that iconic Z and saving the day. But whilst it might look like the tower is defeated, it is still filled with Mega Energy. And in a real outpouring of that grief that AZ said was lurking deep within Prism Tower, Ange fires off one last burst of Mega Energy. That was such a beautiful ending. And whilst this might be Lumiose's second tragedy in the last 5 years alone, I actually think that the city needed it. The biggest theme of this game seemed to be about finding balance, and I just don't think that was possible prior to the events of Legends ZA, because whilst the day was saved by the protagonists of X and Y all that time ago, there were just too many open wounds left from Lysander's megalomania. The previous members of Team Fleur couldn't shake the reputation. Zygarde, a Pokemon who is in essence balance itself, found itself scattered and exhausted by the events that occurred 5 years ago, and even the activation of Ange itself only happened when the ultimate weapon was fired on that day. To me, Ange represents the grief of not only EZ's sins, but the grief of the city in the aftermath of X and Y, and it's been building for the last 5 years until that outpouring occurred in the final moments of this story. Once that happened, the city was finally able to reset. The ultimate example of this is with AZ himself, who we find actually passed away while we were trying to save Lumiose, and much like with Lysander, he is the epitome of someone who struggled for his whole life to find the right balance. In fact, it's actually only in death that AZ was able to find that balance, as he spent most of his life regretting the path that he'd chosen. But with Ange defeated, he's finally able to rest and let go of the past, and so is the city of Lumiose. Now, as much as I would love to end this adventure on that note, there were still a few things that I needed to finish up before I was ready to call time on my adventures here. Some of them were pretty simple and included things like collecting the rest of the colourful screws to get this big Canari plush in my room back at Hotel Z, but some of them were a bit more convoluted. For starters, we still had to be granted our wish for being one of the 2 strongest trainers in the whole ZA Royale, and whilst I didn't exactly think that we were going to be able to type in whatever we wanted to have, to not even be given a tangible choice in what we want the wish to be does kind of feel like a letdown. I feel like I've given a lot of praise to ZA, but I just can't get on board with this one. I mean, even if it was just a choice between a few different options, that would have been perfect. Things like 10 million Poké Dollars, or an upgrade to Hotel Z's interiors, some unique clothing options, or maybe even a complete skip on Mabel's research tasks to unlock the shiny charm a bit earlier. Which I did end up ploughing through all 1000 battles to finally obtain in this post-game section. And I know you can get more research points in the DLC, but to be honest, I really wanted to experience this in the same way that everybody else did at launch, by absolutely suffering through it, and I did indeed suffer because it really is just an insane amount of battles to take on. Fortunately, you can combine this with the Infinite Royale, which is a competition that our wish was spent on, where we're able to rematch so many of the opponents that we faced in the ZA Royale and just Lumiose in general. And whilst I wouldn't usually say that this is worth it to do, there is something you can learn after winning 15 of these, which is that Jet, the CEO of Quasartico, is actually Tawny's grandmother, and the very same person that Tawny came to Lumiose in search of. Which, when I think about it, is actually wild to lock behind 15 wins in a post-game battle competition. I mean, in my first playthrough, I actually assumed it would be something that they were going to explore in the DLC, and so I just left the Infinite Royale there. But anyway, as Jet makes Tawny the new CEO of Quasartico after admitting her own previous shortcomings, that means Tawny's not going to have as much time for Floette, and so we're given AZ's most prized companion to take with us. And Floette isn't the only special Pokemon that we can obtain in this post-game, because both Xerneas and Yveltal are up for grabs too. They're not exactly difficult to catch, but I did help to stretch mine out a bit by trying to snag them both in a Premier Ball, and you do want to catch these because it leads to what could be your final few objectives in this game. You see, when you return to the hotel with Xerneas and Yveltal in hand, El greets you in the courtyard where he offers to battle you for the first and last time in this adventure. And whilst this was a fairly easy battle because my team are practically unbeatable at this point, the great part about this fight and the aftermath is in seeing just how far El has come from the man that he once was. Whilst Lysander once tried to give too much in the form of material things, and then tried to take too much by using the ultimate weapon, El isn't Lysander. Lysander seemed to be the human representation of Xerneas and Yveltal, the one who gives and the one who takes respectively, and I would put AZ in that class too. But L seems much more akin to Zygarde, a creature of balance. He sees his immortality as a gift to make the world a more beautiful place in the right way, and once again I come back to that sentiment I expressed earlier about how much that phrase has been turned on its head for me in this game. It's an expression that's been used 3 times now by the same man, and yet each time has been so different from the last. The Lysander who gave too much and the Lysander who took too much used it to steer the world in the direction that they wanted it to go in, because they didn't trust humanity to do the work themselves. But the reality is that both of them were extremists who were too narrow-minded to see the bigger picture, and L just isn't. L uses the phrase to make the world a more beautiful place, not with the goal of giving humanity what he thinks it needs, or by taking away what he thinks it shouldn't have, but by teaching people how to make it that themselves. Which is something that he learned directly from seeing all of the various different people around Lumiose band together at the very end of the game. It really is amazing. And so is the battle to catch Zygarde here too, which feels like the perfect place to leave this adventure. It's a very tough fight, and it's reminiscent of Volo and Giratina in Legends Arceus, but it's also very different. This is a battle fought not against a megalomaniac, but against a creature that wants you to prove yourself worthy of handling it. A creature that's been tracking us the whole way through our journey, and a creature that progresses through its various forms to really test our limits here. But in the end, and after a lot of hard work from one of my favourite Pokemon teams of all time, we were eventually able to catch Zygarde and finally call time on this adventure. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was another really long adventure, but man, I just had so much fun in Legends ZA. I mean, I could recap everything, but I think you've already figured out by now that this video was a love letter to this game, or it at least tried to be. I've had a few people ask if I'll be making a video on the Mega Dimension DLC, and whilst I don't think I will be streaming the entire thing on YouTube, so come and join in on whatever I'm streaming when you see this video drop. A lot of you will have joined the streams to see me complete the shiny hunts for this adventure, so thank you very much if you are one of those people, because it's something that I really do treasure getting to share with you all each week. But I'd also like to give a super special shout out to our channel members now, who have been helping to support both me and the channel by being so generous. You guys are the absolute best, thank you so much! I'll be starting a new challenge soon back in Legends Arceus with a Shiny Dream Team quest, but in the meantime I also have a secret project on the move, so hopefully I'll see you all for that when it debuts on the channel. But for now, just stay safe, and I wish you all the very best of luck in your own shiny hunting endeavours. There has quite literally never been a more appropriate time to say my usual sign off, so here we go. Au revoir, Wayfarers.